Lizzie Borden, welcome. You're already laughing and we just started. I feel good about this.
Yeah, me too. I love this movie.
Writer-director Lizzie Borden, thank you for being here. Lizzie is here to continue our series of political films, all culled from the New Republic's list of the 100 most significant political films of all time. The film that Lizzie has chosen is from 1975, directed by Chantal Akerman. This is Jeanne Dielman, Je te vends d'ici de Bruxelles.
Sounds perfect.
Thank you very much, yeah. It's a very long, we're just going to go with Jeanne Dielman. You have spoken about this concept of emotional labor that Jeanne Dielman endures in the movie. What do you mean by emotional labor?
Well, it's a labor that women do after they do their regular work. You know, it's called the second shift.
Right.
And that wasn't recognized. It was coined the second shift in 1989 by a sociologist, but it really wasn't respected. You know, it's the unseen, unrecognized, unvoiced labor that women do. And Jeanne Dielman doesn't have a regular job except for servicing clients as a working woman in the afternoons. But she does that just as she does her chores.
Yeah, the story is told over 3 days.
Right.
And you see that this is a woman in many ways defined by her routine.
Right.
And the repetitive behavior again and again that includes this incredibly mundane task of going to the store to buy potatoes and coming back and cooking the potatoes and preparing the dinner and taking care of her son, who's quite old enough to be doing many of these things himself, but he's rather helpless in that regard. And then one of the things she does is every day a different client, and they go back into her bedroom. And you say that it was described by Chantal Akerman that that's between 5 and 5:30.
Yes.
None of this is clearly spelled out in the movie.
No.
But you read that Chantal Akerman thought of it as 5 to 5:30. It's that quick.
And she treats her son in many ways the same way. She takes his coat and she takes his scarf and she puts them in the closet. But it's the kind of thing where it seems boring at first, but on many levels it's fascinating. And Chantal Akerman also said that if she chose just a regular looking woman, nobody would be interested. But she cast Delphine Seyrig because Delphine Seyrig, who's extraordinary, she is elegant. We are able to watch her perform these tasks and in many ways are fascinated by it. And so my recommendation for anybody watching this film is to watch it once, however anybody gets through it. Be bored, turn it on, turn it off, then watch it a second time because it's an extraordinary film and it's also a thriller.
It is also a thriller. I would have said that to me this movie was fairly impenetrable the first time I saw it, so I largely gave up on it. It's a totally different experience, seeing it again when you know what's coming. Because you talk about you could be bored, but the idea, of course, you know who's bored? Jeanne Dielman is bored. You know, this is, don't you think? I mean, that the idea that it's boring is a huge part of this.
Yes and no. I agree with you, but sometimes she's not bored. Sometimes she's, in our parlance today, she's mindful. Sometimes she does tasks very roughly. Other times she's just meditative. Chantal Akerman also said that Jeanne Dielman is a love letter to her mother, and it's the idea of taking these repetitive tasks that are for someone and putting love into it.
Yeah, there are scenes here where she's prepping the meatloaf, or a number of situations where we see her repeating a task and the scene lasts. I mean, to say it lasts longer than most other directors would have it does not do that justice. And there was pushback, there was give and take there, right?
There was give and take. Delphine Seyrig gave Chantal Akerman pushback even about not smiling at certain times. For example, when her sister says to her, you should be with somebody, you're an attractive woman.
Yeah.
And Delphine Seyrig said to her, shouldn't I smile at that? And she said, I would prefer if you did not. So very often this 25-year-old young filmmaker says to this well-known actress, no, I would prefer if you not, and held her ground. But I really do urge anyone who sees this film to give it the time that it needs in whatever way, because as you were talking about the meatloaf is really, the meatloaf is really important if you compare it to the veal. Now, here's the difference.
What's the difference?
The meatloaf, she's rough with it. It's not just that we hear it.
Yeah, she's rough with it. Yeah.
Because Chantal Akerman doesn't let her face express anything, she's completely rough with that meatloaf. It's like she's expressing herself through the way she's kneading that meatloaf. The veal, there is a big difference. When she makes the veal, it's very rhythmic, it's very loving. And to a specific recipe of Chantal Akerman's aunt, she makes it.
And the veal is the first meal we see her make.
Yes,
the meatloaf is the
it's
second.
before her days go off, because one should say even before one sees the film is that day one sets up her routine, and we know it by heart. By day two, things start to go wrong. By day three, everything is wrong.
Pay attention to the routine and then how the routine is broken.
Yes, because there are intertitles that will tell you when the days are over.
All right, we will resume this conversation after the film, Lizzie. Thanks
Okay.
very much. Here it is from 1975, directed by Chantal Akerman, Jeanne Dielman. Back with writer-director Lizzie Borden. Thank you so much for being here, and thanks for picking Jeanne Dielman. Thanks for getting me to see it again. So it didn't occur to me when I put my list together for the New Republic list of the 100 most significant films of all time, it didn't occur to me to include Jeanne Dielman. I didn't feel the way I feel about it now, but it still, I don't think it would have occurred to me to include it in a list of political films. So you don't have any, no reservation, this is a political film.
Absolutely, because it's domestic labor. The idea that putting domestic labor on the level of importance now, it wouldn't have been seen as a political film years ago. You know, let's say Battle of Algiers, any of the other films that are
Right,
Spike
yeah.
Lee's films. This isn't as overt.
Well, I think, but
Yeah.
this belongs then in the same category of Do the Right Thing, right?
Absolutely.
Which I wouldn't instinctively think of as a political film, but I agree with you. I now don't have any trouble seeing it as a political picture.
Well, here's the question though, is she commits an act because she's breaking out, but the question is breaking out to what? Within a patriarchal culture, what can she break out to?
What happens in the next 90 minutes?
I don't know that they would call the police. I don't know that either could give up their routine. You know, my feeling is Sylvain would come home, they would have to get rid of the body. You know, so much is made of that. The comforter, they would wrap the guy up in the comforter, get rid of the guy. Nobody knows he's been coming over.
That's right.
And they would go on with their routine, but Sylvain would have so much hatred and resentment. He would become the little king of the house. And this would happen till he graduated. And then she would go finally to Canada, open up a little business, maybe a knitting shop or a button shop, and never marry again. And nobody would ever find her. But she'd eventually have her freedom, but maybe not sexual freedom. I don't know that she's interested in that. But somehow she would not have to run men's lives anymore. What's so interesting to me in reading about Chantal Akerman is we were both inspired by Godard. I was inspired in a different way to make agitprop. And movies that really agitated people, wanted to make them come out and
Right, you
do
wanted
something.
to shake people into action.
Shake people up, yeah, exactly. But the idea of making what I would see a boring art film was the opposite of what I wanted to do. So the first time I saw Jeanne Dielman, I was completely bored. It was only later, after I made Working Girls, my second film, that I appreciated Jeanne Dielman, because everyone thought I must have really loved Jeanne Dielman to make a film about prostitutes.
Right, your film Working Girls is sort of a day in the life of a bunch of girls in Manhattan who work in a brothel.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so people thought I was totally influenced by Jeanne Dielman, and in some ways maybe subconsciously I was. It is one of the films in that era that dealt with working women as working, as labor.
Yeah.
You know, not as sexual, not as a turn on. You know, if any guy went in to see Working Girls and wanted to get turned on, they would be really disappointed.
Yeah.
They'd want their money back, right?
Right, yeah.
The same with, Jeanne Dielman, if you hear.
Right, I mean, the sex that you see in Jeanne Dielman is not
Sexy.
It's not sexy. No, it's depressing.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This movie, Jeanne Dielman, comes in at number 36 on the list. Your first film, Born in Flames, made 8 years later, 1983, is number 43 on the list. That must have been a great thrill.
Born in Flames has been a shock because it's such a little do-it-yourself movie. I was absolutely shocked that it would make a list with Battle of Algiers, which I took so much from. I actually stole shots from Battle of Algiers.
For Born in Flames.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The thing about Born in Flames, and that may be why it's on the list, is that I never expected Born in Flames to even be looked at these days. I thought that all the issues I dealt with would be dealt with now. And now we're living in a culture that is like looking like it could be Handmaid's Tale,
Right.
And hopefully it's not.
Hopefully it's not. Lizzie, thank you. This was lovely. I'm so glad to finally meet you. Thanks for all the help you've given TCM.
I am so happy to meet you. This has been fun.
Lizzie's done for the night, but the movies, the political films, continue here on TCM, uncut, commercial-free. Stay with us.
Next on TCM, Olympia Part 1, Festival of the Nations. Then Olympia Part 2, Festival of Beauty. And later, Dick Tracy's Dilemma. TCM's in a pinch today.